By Jalen, be gone.
The wind came screaming off the plains that night, throwing dust against the canvas of the freight wagon like handfuls of nails. Inside, lantern light rocked with every gust. A man sat on the wagon bench, broad-shouldered, coat collar turned up against the cold, his Winchester resting easy across his knees. His name was Elias Boone, a hauler of freight, a man who'd buried more horses than he'd had friends. He'd spent 10 years hauling everything from dynamite to preachers' organs across the Dakota Territory, and in all that time he'd learned one thing: a quiet road after midnight was either a blessing from God or bait from the devil. He was 2 days out of Cheyenne when it happened. A shape broke from the darkness ahead, a horse stumbling, rider half slumped over the saddle horn. Boone flicked the reins, slowing. The horse collapsed 20 feet from the wagon and the rider hit the dirt with a thud. At first glance, Boone figured it was a boy, thin-build, rough coat, face hidden under a wide hat. He grabbed his lantern and climbed down. "Hey there, kid, you all right?" No answer, just a ragged breath and a flash of steel. The kid wasn't a kid at all. She moved fast, knife in one hand, small pistol in the other. Her hat hit the ground, spilling a wave of dark hair. The pistol's hammer cocked with a sound that could freeze blood. "Don't move," she said, voice steady, eyes wild. "Hands where I can see 'em." Boone lifted his palms slow, lantern still glowing between them. "You picked the wrong wagon, miss." "Maybe," she said, stepping closer, "but I don't see anyone else on this road." He saw the tremble in her wrist. She was scared, desperate. She wasn't a killer, not yet. Boone had hauled enough convicts to know the look. "What's in the wagon?" she asked. "Supplies, flour, tools, canned peaches if you're lucky." She motioned with the pistol, "Then move aside." Boone stepped back, watching her climb onto the rear gate. She threw open the top and started rummaging through the crates. Quick, nervous movements like a coyote digging at a trap. "You traveling alone?" Boone asked. "Don't matter. It does if you're hurt." That horse looked half dead. She ignored him, prying open a crate of tobacco tins. Her hands shook as she stuffed a few into her coat. He noticed the blood on her sleeve, dark, dried, old enough to worry about. "You got a name?" he asked. "I said don't talk." Boone chuckled, a low rumble. "You're robbing a man who's been robbed by the best of 'em. At least tell me who to thank for the entertainment." She glared at him, and for a heartbeat he saw something flicker in her eyes. Shame, maybe. Then she said, "Lydia." "Lydia what?" She hesitated. "Doesn't matter." "Not to you." Boone nodded slowly. "Fair enough. But if you're gonna steal a man's goods, you might as well take the whole story with you." She froze. "What story?" "That the freight you're digging through ain't mine," he said. "It belongs to the Union Pacific. They don't take kindly to thieves, especially ones caught red-handed." Her eyes darted toward him, uncertainty breaking through her mask. "You said it was just flour and peaches. I said what I needed to keep you from getting shot before sunrise. That box you just cracked, there's a telegraph coil in there worth more than your horse." Her jaw tightened. "You're lying." "Maybe. You want to find out which." For a long second the storm outside filled the silence. Wind, canvas flapping, the lonely moan of prairie emptiness. Then she lowered the pistol just a hair. "Why haven't you tried to stop me?" she asked. Boone smiled faintly. "Because you ain't the first soul to point a gun at me, and I learned years ago if somebody's desperate enough to steal from a hauler in the middle of nowhere, they got a worse problem than I do." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you know me? I think I've seen what hunger looks like when it wears a person thin. You're not out here for peaches. You're running from something." That hit home. She flinched like the words themselves cut her. Then she shoved the pistol toward him again. "Just stay back. I'll take what I need and ride." "Suit yourself," Boone said. "But you won't make it 10 miles. That horse of yours is done, and the next town's 25 out. You'll freeze before you find a fence post." She hesitated, glancing toward the black horizon. The wind howled harder, and the faint scent of snow carried through it. "Then I'll take your wagon." Boone let out a quiet laugh. "Now that, miss, would be a sight worth seeing. You ever driven 6 mules in a crosswind?" Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "I'll figure it out." Boone studied her. Dirty coat, torn boots, eyes full of fire she didn't know how to use. "You ain't a thief," he said softly. "You're just trying not to die." For a heartbeat the fight drained from her. The gun lowered an inch more. You don't know what I've done, she whispered. Maybe not, but I know what you ain't done yet. And if you were a killer, I'd already be dead. The silence between them hung thick. Then Boone did something she didn't expect. He stepped forward past the pistol and handed her the lantern. She stared at it. What are you doing? Letting you rob me, he said simply. Go on, take what you came for. Her eyes darted between him and the glow of the flame. She searched his face for a trick, but there wasn't one. He looked tired, on, like a man who'd seen enough hell to know when mercy was worth more than bullets. She swallowed hard. What? Boone's voice dropped low. Because someday you'll need someone to believe you're not what the world made you. Might as well start now. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind hissed through the seams of the wagon, and the lantern flame danced across her face. Dust, fear, and something close to tears. She reached into the crate, grabbed a tin of tobacco, a blanket and a loaf of bread. Then she stepped down, the pistol hanging loose at her side. Boone watched her walk toward the dead horse. You forgot one thing, he called after her. She turned, wary. What? He tipped his hat. My last name. Her brow furrowed. Why the hell would I need that? 'Cause if you're gonna steal a man's wagon, you might end up taking his life too. And if that's the case, you best know who he was. Elias Boone. Remember it. Lydia blinked, as if the words meant more than he realized. Then she turned, disappeared into the darkness, and the storm swallowed her up. Boone stood there long after she was gone, the lantern flame guttering in his hand. Somewhere out in that black prairie, a woman was running towards something worse than him. He didn't know yet that before the week was done she'd ride back into his life, bleeding, hunted, and holding the one thing he thought he'd lost forever. The storm rolled east before dawn, leaving the plains washed clean and bitter cold. Elias Boone packed the wagon by first light, fingers stiff from the chill. The girl, Lydia, was long gone. Her footprints cut a ragged path north, then vanished into the frozen grass. Boone figured she'd never make it far, but he didn't go looking. He'd already done his share of rescuing folks who didn't want saving. Still, her face lingered in his mind like the echo of a song he couldn't shake. By mid-morning the mules were restless. Boone flicked the reins and rolled west toward Cheyenne. The road was a dull brown scar across the prairie, nothing but wind and emptiness for miles. The kind of land that stripped a man down to whatever truth he was hiding from. He told himself he didn't care what became of her. But when he passed the creek bed 2 hours later and saw the dark splash of blood near the rocks, his gut said otherwise. He climbed down, knelt, touched the stain. It was fresh. A few yards away lay a torn scrap of cloth, the same gray wool she'd been wearing. Boone swore under his breath. Damn fool woman. A man could walk away from a thief easy, but walking away from someone bleeding alone on the plains, that took a colder heart than Boone possessed. He followed the trail, leading the team through a narrow cut of land where the wind whistled low. The tracks bent east, toward an old lime shack left over from the railroad crews. Smoke rose from its crooked chimney. Boone rested a hand on the Winchester and stepped down. The door creaked open before he could knock. Lydia stood there pale, shivering, one arm bandaged with a strip of her own coat. The pistol from last night hung loose at her side. You again, she said, voice hoarse. Yeah, Boone answered, lowering his rifle. You forgot to die. She gave a faint, bitter laugh. Working on it, he glanced past her into the cabin, empty, save for a broken chair, a cot and a dying fire. She'd patched her wound with tobacco and grit, the way soldiers did when they had no doctor. Boone stepped inside, set his rifle by the wall. Let me see that arm. I said, I'm fine. Sure you are. Just bleeding to death slower than usual. Before she could argue, he took her wrist gently and unwrapped the cloth. The gash ran deep, clean through the muscle, looked like a knife wound, not a He cleaned it with whiskey from his saddlebag, ignoring her hiss of pain. Who did this? He asked. Doesn't matter. Everything matters out here, especially what cuts you. She stared at him for a long moment, then looked away. I robbed the wrong man. Boone didn't press, just kept working, sewing the wound with the needle he used for harness leather. When he finished, she leaned back against the cot, breathing hard. You got a habit of saving people who try to rob you, only the ones too stubborn to stay. Silence hung heavy between them. The fire popped, casting shadows across her face. She was younger than he'd thought, mid-20s maybe. Pretty in that way the frontier tried to beat out of people but couldn't quite manage. Finally, Boone said, "You from around here?" "Used to be. Before the railroad came through. Family. Had one." He waited. When she didn't go on, he asked, "What happened?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "A man named Carter." Boone's head snapped up. "You sure about that name?" She looked puzzled. "Yeah. Why?" He didn't answer, just stared into the fire, jaw tight. There were 100 Carters in Wyoming, but only one that mattered. The same one who'd cost Boone 3 friends and half his freight line 2 years back. "He's a tall man?" Boone asked. "Scar under the right eye." Her eyes widened. "You know him?" Boone nodded slowly. "I hauled for him once. Thought he was a cattle buyer. Turned out he was running stolen army guns through the freight lines." She swallowed hard. "Then you know what he's capable of?" Boone looked at her. "He's the one you robbed." Her silence was answer enough. "Hell," Boone muttered, running a hand through his hair. "You didn't just rob a thief, miss. You robbed the devil himself." "I didn't know who he was," she said quickly. He killed my brother." Boone froze. "Your brother?" "Name was Will." Her voice cracked on the word. "He worked for Carter, hauling shipments out of Fort Laramie. When he found out what Carter was doing, he tried to quit. They shot him in the back and left him for the coyote." Boone stared at her, every word settling heavy. He'd heard about that killing, never knew the man's name, just another body on the trail. "So you went after Carter yourself?" Boone said quietly. She nodded. "I found him in Rawlins, drunk and bragging. I waited till he passed out, took what he had in his safe, money, documents, something he called the manifest. He woke up before I could get out the door." Boone's eyes narrowed. "And he cut you?" She looked down at the stitched wound. "Guess I got off easy." Boone paced the small cabin, mind working. "If you took Carter's papers, he'll come after you, and he won't stop till he gets 'em back." "I know," she whispered. "You got 'em on you?" She hesitated, then reached into her coat and pulled out a leather satchel, worn and blood-stained. Boone took it, opened the flap. Inside were bundles of bills, a small revolver, and a folded sheaf of papers stamped with the seal of the U.S. Ordnance Department. Boone's stomach turned cold. "You realize what this is?" She shook her head. "This is proof Carter's been selling rifles to both sides of the Indian Wars. If the army gets wind of this, they'll hang him, and anyone caught holding it." Lydia went still. "So what do I do?" Boone looked at her, eyes hard. "You disappear." She gave a broken laugh. "Tried that. Didn't work." He sighed, tossed the satchel onto the cot. "Then you ride with me. I'm headed to Cheyenne. Sheriff there owes me a favor. You'd turn me in?" "Not unless you give me reason to." She studied him for a moment, searching his face. "Why help me?" Boone hesitated, then said, "Because I've seen what Carter does to people who cross him, and because once upon a time, somebody pulled me out of a hole I'd dug myself into. Figured I'd pay the favor forward." For the first time she almost smiled. "You're a strange man, Boone. Gets worse the longer you know me." Outside, thunder rolled again, distant this time, but not far enough. Boone went to the window, scanning the horizon. In the far distance, under the pale wash of dawn, 3 riders moved slow along the ridge. He felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. "Carter's men," he said. Lydia's hand went to her pistol. "How many?" "Enough to make this place real uncomfortable." Boone blew out the lamp and started loading the wagon again. "We leave now." She hesitated. "You sure you want to do this? You could walk away." He gave her a grim smile. "Lady, you already stole my peace and my tobacco. Might as well steal my plans too." Within minutes they were back on the wagon, rolling fast across the frozen earth, the storm clouds breaking open behind them. The riders on the ridge turned south, following. Boone didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew Carter's kind. They hunted slow, like wolves, and when the wind carried the faint echo of a gunshot across the plains, Boone only muttered one thing under his breath. "Guess the wars started early." The trail to Cheyenne cut through Dry Creek Canyon, a jagged stretch of shale and red dust, that looked like God had dragged his fingernails across the earth. Boone hated the place. Too many blind turns, too many places for a man to disappear or ambush another. By midday the sun was high, heat rising off the rocks like ghosts. Lydia sat beside him on the wagon seat, her wounded arms stiff, eyes sharp as a hawk's. She hadn't spoken much since they left the line shack. Boone didn't push. Some silences were earned. "Drink," he said finally, handing her the canteen. She took it, drank deep, then passed it back. "You really think that sheriff in Cheyenne can help me?" Boone squinted ahead. "He'll try, but Carter's got friends in every saloon between here and Rawlins. If he wants you dead, it won't be easy stopping him. So what's your plan?" "Same as always," Boone said. "Don't die." That made her smile, a small tired curve of the lips, but it was the first one he'd seen. They rounded a bend and Boone froze. Ahead, the narrow pass dipped into a dried-up creek bed bordered by cliffs on both sides. He reined in the mules. "What is it?" Lydia asked. "Tracks," he said, pointing down. "Fresh. At least 4 horses. Maybe 5. She stiffened. "Carter's men?" Boone scanned the rocks. "Could be." He pulled the rifle from its scabbard, checked the chamber. "Get down. Stay close to the wagon." The world went quiet, just wind and the creak of leather. Boone guided the mules forward, slow and steady. The canyon walls closed in tight, the kind of place where sound bounced wrong and shadows lied. Halfway through the pass, a rock shifted high above. Boone didn't look up, just said softly, "Now if you were a smart girl you'd start praying." The gunfire came a heartbeat late. 2 shots cracked from the ridge, bullets slicing through the air. Boone dove behind a boulder, returning fire with a sharp, practiced rhythm. Lydia scrambled for cover, the pistol shaking in her hand. "Mules!" Boone shouted. "Cut 'em loose." She didn't argue. Crawling low, she slashed the harness, freeing the panicked animals as gunfire echoed through the canyon. The wagon shuddered under the impact of bullets. 1 wheel splintered, 3 riders on the left ridge. Boone called, "I see 2 more." Lydia shouted back, firing blind. Boone risked a glance over the rock. The gunmen were closing in, moving down the slope in a loose half-circle. "They're trying to box us in. Then we don't let 'em." Before Boone could stop her, Lydia darted toward the wagon, grabbed the satchel, and slid under the axle, as another shot rang out. The ground kicked dust near her face. "Damn it, woman," Boone yelled. She ignored him. "Cover me." Boone cursed and fired 3 quick rounds, dropping one of the riders off his horse. The others ducked behind rocks. Lydia crawled to a small outcrop and started shooting, her aim wild but fierce. "Who taught you to shoot?" Boone barked. "My brother," she shouted back. "Didn't have time for lessons." He almost laughed. Almost. Then came the sound Boone dreaded most. The click of an empty chamber. Lydia's pistol was out. One rider took the chance, charging down the slope. Boone sighted the Winchester, waited until the man was 10 yards off, and fired once. The shot hit clean. The rider toppled backward, his hat spinning into the dust. Silence followed, just wind and the faint whine of an injured mule. Boone waited, breath slow, rifle steady. No more movement. After a long minute, Lydia crawled from behind the rock, hair wild, face streaked with dirt and blood. "They gone." "For now," Boone said. "But they'll be back with more." She looked around at the wrecked wagon. "Then what now?" Boone slung the rifle over his shoulder. "We move. Leave the freight. Travel light." She nodded, grabbing the satchel. But as she turned, something caught Boone's eye. A mark carved into one of the fallen rider's saddles. A branding iron in the shape of a horseshoe, with 3 dots. His stomach tightened. That wasn't Carter's brand. It belonged to a man named Boyd Keenan, a bounty hunter who'd once worked for the Union Pacific before turning outlaw. "What is it?" Lydia asked, seeing his face change. Boone crouched by the dead man. "These ain't Carter's boys, they're Keenan's." "Who's Keenan?" Boone looked up at her, grim. "The kind of man Carter hires when he wants something found quick and buried quiet." Lydia's eyes widened. "You mean, he's bringing an army, not a posse?" Boone stood, checked the sun. "We'll never make Cheyenne on the main road. We cut south through the Black Hollow Ridge. It's slower, but it's cover." Lydia hesitated, then said quietly, "You could still walk away, Boone." He met her eyes. "Could, but that'd leave you alone with Carter's papers, and I ain't letting another Boone get killed over that man's greed." She frowned. "Another Boone?" Boone froze. He hadn't meant to say it. "What did you mean?" she pressed. He looked away, jaw tight. "My brother. He was a guard on Carter's freight line. Got ambushed 2 winters ago. They said it was Indian." She stared at him, realization dawning. "It wasn't, was it?" Boone shook his head. "No, it was Carter." For a moment, neither spoke. Just wind through the canyon, and the smell of gunpowder fading into dust. Finally, Lydia said softly, "Then we've both lost someone to him." Boone nodded. "Which means we've both got a reason to see this through." They climbed onto the surviving mule, the sun bleeding red across the cliffs. As they rode south, Boone glanced once over his shoulder at the canyon, at the bodies, the broken wagon, the shadows creeping longer by the minute. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt it deep in his gut. The hunt had just begun, and the next time Carter's men found them, mercy wouldn't be part of the plan. By the time they reached Black Hollow Ridge, night had swallowed the plains whole. The moon was a thin white coin in the sky, barely enough light to see by. The mule stumbled up the rocky path, breath coming in short bursts. Lydia clung to the saddle behind Boone, her arm still throbbing from the wound, her cheek pressed against his. The old mining camp appeared just before midnight, a cluster of half-collapsed shacks and a rusted water tower leaning like a drunk against the stars. The place had been dead since the silver rush dried up 5 years earlier, perfect for hiding, or for being buried. Boone led the mule under the broken timbers, scanning every shadow before he spoke. "We'll stay here till sunrise, maybe longer if the trail's cold." Lydia slid off, legs shaking. "You think they'll find us?" "They always do," he said, unsaddling the mule. "The trick's being gone before they figure out what they found." They made camp inside the largest shack roof, mostly intact, old mine lamps still hanging from the beams. Boone sparked a small fire, careful to keep it low. The glow painted the walls in warm orange flicker, turning dust motes into drifting sparks. Lydia sat across from him, silent, turning the satchel of stolen papers in her lap. "You ever think about just letting it all go?" she asked, finally. Boone looked up. "You mean walk away?" "Yeah, from all of it, the hauling, the fighting, the ghosts." He smirked faintly. "Every day, but ghosts don't care if you walk, they follow." Her eyes softened. "You talk like a man who's lost too much." Boone poked at the fire. "That's the only kind worth listening to." Silence hung heavy for a while. Outside, the wind carried a lonely whistle through the canyon walls. Then Boone said quietly, "You ever tell me what was in that manifest you took?" Lydia hesitated. "Just papers. I didn't read 'em all." "Try again." She sighed. "It's a serial numbers, shipments, routes, guns, mostly. But there's another document too, with signatures. Yours is one of 'em." Boone's hand froze over the fire. "What'd you say?" "Your name's on it, Boone. Elias Boone. Right next to Carter. Says you authorized a shipment of 30 crates bound for Fort Laramie." Boone stood slow, anger tightening every line of his face. "That's a lie. I didn't say you did it," Lydia said quickly. "I'm saying Carter forged it. Used your name to move the rifle." Boone ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "That son of a bitch. No wonder the army agents started sniffing around my freight. I thought it was coincidence. Now it's proof." Boone stopped pacing, looked at her. "That paper ties both of us to his crime. You understand what that means?" She nodded. "If we don't clear it, we're the ones they'll hang." For a long moment neither spoke. The fire crackled, and somewhere outside, a loose board creaked in the wind. Lydia broke the silence first. "What if we made a deal?" "What kind?" "We take the papers to the army ourselves, trade the proof for protection. You clear your name, and Carter loses everything." Boone's eyes narrowed. "You trust the army? The same men who looked the other way while Carter sold rifles under their nose?" "I trust no one," Lydia said, voice low, "but it's the only chance we got." Boone stared at her for a long moment, then said softly, "You're a stubborn woman. Maybe, but so are you." That almost made him smile. Almost. He was about to speak when a faint crunch echoed outside. the sound of gravel under boots. Both froze. Boone motioned for silence, grabbing his rifle. Lydia doused the fire with her boot. Darkness swallowed the shack. Another sound, a horse snorting, a metal jingle, then a voice rough and too close. "Check the shacks. If they're here, I want 'em breathing long enough to talk." Boone mouthed one word. "Keenan." Lydia's pulse hammered. Boone eased to the back wall, where a window frame hung crooked in its sill. He glanced out, saw 4 riders, torches in hand, sweeping the ruins. He turned to Lydia. Out the back. Quiet. They slipped through the window, boots sinking in the dust. The cold hit hard. Behind them a door crashed open. The bounty hunters were inside. "Go," Boone whispered. "Up the ridge." She nodded, clutching the satchel tight. Boone stayed a few seconds longer, then grabbed a fallen lantern and smashed it against the floorboards. The oil caught instantly, flames licking up the wall. The explosion of light drew the riders' attention. As they rushed toward the burning shack, Boone and Lydia ran for the ridge. The night filled with shouts, gunfire cracking behind them. They reached the top breathless. Below, the camp glowed like a dying star. Boone glanced back once, saw Keenan himself emerge from the flames, a tall man with a scar down his neck and eyes like black glass. Their gazes met across the distance. Boone felt it then, the promise of death. "Keep moving," he said. They disappeared over the ridge, just as dawn bled across the horizon. Lydia stumbled, but kept pace, her voice barely a whisper. "He saw us." "I know," Boone said, "which means by nightfall, every trail from here to Cheyenne'll be watched." And then, Boone's jaw tightened. "Then we stop running." She looked at him, confusion and fear mixed in her eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means we make our stand before he does." The wind howled through the hollow, carrying the smell of smoke and gunpowder. Below them the old mining camp burned bright against the pale sky, a beacon for every killer on their trail. And as the first light touched Boone's face, Lydia finally understood. The fight wasn't just survival anymore. It was personal. By dusk, they reached the ridge, overlooking Red Mesa, a dry basin of scarlet stone and broken wagon wheels. Boone knew the place. He'd hauled freight through here years ago before it turned into a graveyard for men with bad timing. Lydia sat beside him, pale and silent, clutching the satchel. Behind them, dust clouds rose on the horizon. Keenan was coming, and behind him rode Carter, the man who'd stolen Boone's name and murdered her brother. Boone checked his rifle, eyes hard. "No more running." Lydia swallowed. "You think we can take them?" "Don't need to," Boone said. "Just need to finish what they start." He led her down to the heart of the basin, where an old telegraph pole leaned half buried in sand. The last light painted everything blood red. When the riders appeared, it was like a storm breaking over the ridge. Keenan first, then Carter, smug and smiling under a wide black hat. "Well, hell," Carter called. "If it ain't Elias Boone, didn't think you had the spine to face me." Boone stepped forward. "I got enough left for you." Carter dismounted slow, boots crunching gravel. "You got something belongs to me." "The papers?" Boone said. "They belong to the army now." Carter laughed. "You think they'll save you? They'll hang you with me. That signature ties you to every rifle I sold." Boone's eyes didn't waver. "Maybe, but the difference between us, Carter, is I'll hang clean." Keenan raised his rifle, but Boone moved faster. One shot split the air. Keenan fell before his finger even twitched. Gunfire exploded. Lydia dove behind a wagon wheel, firing back. Carter's men scattered, but Boone walked forward through the dust like death in a duster coat. Bullets whined past, kicking dirt at his boots. He didn't stop. Then a shot rang from behind. Lydia's scream cut through the canyon. Boone turned. Carter stood 10 paces away, pistol smoking. Lydia was on the ground, the satchel clutched against her chest. Boone's world went silent. He raised his rifle, calm as a preacher. "You shouldn't have done that," Carter sneered. "She robbed me." Boone's voice dropped to a whisper. "She robbed me first. Difference is, I let her." Carter hesitated, confused, and that's when Boone fired. The bullet hit center chest. Carter stumbled, fell to his knees. Dust swirled around him as Boone walked close. Carter tried to speak, but Boone crouched beside him and said low, steady, You forgot one thing, Carter. Carter blinked. What? Boone tipped his hat. My last name. He fired once more. The echo rolled across Red Mesa, fading into the wind. Boone turned back. Lydia lay breathing shallow, eyes glassy. He knelt beside her, pressed her hand to his chest. You made it, she whispered. We made it, he said. Her lips curved faintly. You never told me what Boone means. He smiled through the dust. Means nothing special, unless you're the one wearing it. Her hand went still. Boone sat there till the stars came out, the wind sighing through the canyon like a hymn. By morning he'd bury her under that telegraph pole, and when the army came, he'd hand them the satchel, his rifle and his name. Because out here, a man's name was all he truly owned, and Elias Boone finally knew what his was worth. The